All right. I think it's time to get small, right? We're talking microservices here. I'm Chris Lennon. Let's do some quick introductions of our esteemed panel up here. So Chris Lennon with Ross Video.
I'm Loic Barbeau, Chief Architect for Bloomberg Media.
Bernard Jenkins, President, SMPTE, and I2A2.
And Sean Maynard, FloraCal Systems.
All right. So, yeah, thanks for joining us. We're going to do a little introduction to what we've been working on for the last year or so on the SMPTE RIS-OSA group. If that doesn't set a record for acronyms strung together, I don't know what does. But SMPTE's RIS-OSA group RIS is a Rapid Industry Solutions group, which means we try to take on projects that are meaningful but can be wrapped up in a reasonably short period of time. And we try to target weeks and months. Try not to do anything that spans more than a year if we can help it. And so, we try to address things rapidly. And then the OSA part of it is the Open Services Alliance fits perfectly because we're focused on microservice-based architectures and things that are changing all the time. If we were to take, years to develop something for that, it would be meaningless by the time we got done with it. So it's a perfect marriage, really, of using the RIS structure for working on microservice-based projects. Not to say that this is at the exclusion of standards, because it's not. Pretty much everything that this group has ever worked on has ended up in the SMPTE standards process. So that makes sense, but it gets in there quicker than it might have otherwise. So there's been a lot of different initiatives that we've worked on in RIS-OSA. There's a couple in the title of the program here that we'll focus on, but I'd like to talk a little bit about, maybe before we jump into what we've done on the control plane and what we're starting to do on live streaming, maybe a little bit of background might be useful on some other big issues that we've been able to tackle pretty quickly. One of the first ones we really tackled was the problem of when you're, again, dealing with orchestration of microservices and interoperability among all of those. There's a real lack of consistency in the way status reporting and logging is done. And, if you've been involved with a microservice-based architecture, you can imagine the number of services you're dealing with, the number of vendors you're particularly dealing with. And if you don't have some kind of consistency with the status reporting you're getting back, it's like a he said, she said type of thing, right? There can be a lot of finger pointing there and no real solution. Loic, you came to the RIS-OSA when we were looking for a solution in this area. Can you talk a little bit about what, some of the precursors were to that? What was the real problem to be solved?
Well, let me actually provide a little bit of detail about that conversation that we had there. Chris came to me and said, hey, we have this group. It's part of OSA. SMPTE is in the mix. We're trying to standardize, to create a standard for the status reporting and logging. And I was like, hold on. We have something that we have in the works. It's part of some work that we've done for, as a open working group. And when Chris said those words, I'm like, I'm not spending 10 years writing documents, for this to become a standard. And he's like, no. This is not the SMPTE that you think about. This is something that is totally different.
This is not your father's SMPTE.
No. It took us 6 months and we're done. So I think that shows yes, this is not maybe your, the way you're thinking about some of the older SMPTE, your father's SMPTE, as you said. But the interaction was actually quite amazing. The brain powers and the excitement and the energy that went into doing this was actually, that made it so easy for us. We provided really the technology, we provided the how to actually, to design and provide the technology to do the status reporting and the logging. During our discussions, we even made it better with the additional brain power that came to the mix. But no, I mean, it was a very well optimized pipeline, I must say, and we were able to achieve things in a very easy way for everyone who was involved. Yep.
Yeah. So, that was just, kind of one example of, pick a problem that needs to be solved. It can only really be solved through collaboration, right? One vendor, two vendors could not solve this kind of problem. And that was an example, like Loic said, of getting something done from inception to completion in 6 months or less, which it proved out our model, I think. And so, what we're here to talk about today is two of the current projects that we're really focusing on in this area. And, one of them, Renard, whenever I talk to people in the business and they're talking about, the onset of media in the cloud and microservices, that microservices are great. I'm a big believer in them. But the challenge you get when you have microservices is you have so many different places where things can break, right? And the control plane has come up as one of the big things that's like completely missing is how do I control all these services and all these devices that can be on the cloud, they can be on-prem, they could be anywhere, and I shouldn't have to care, right? I mean, just make it work. You want to talk a little bit about kind of the nature of that challenge that we've got as an industry?
Yeah, I think as an industry for years, we have gone round and round with coming up with solutions, but they've always been pieces of a larger puzzle. When you go all the way back, just starting when we were looking at centralized storage, one of the things that was great was you started moving files around and we had, what was called an MDM. That was your director, that was really telling every signal where to go, what to do. When we got into the space of creating the pipeline and the supply chain, we then said, okay, can we take a look at an enterprise service bus and using that, the ESB as itself, to see if that could be, sort of replace the MDM, use the ESB. We now have a little bit of control. Part of it worked, part of it didn't, mainly because there were not enough standards within this space, and we were going from broadband and SDI into IP. We had to try and figure things out. Now that we are almost fully in an IP infrastructure, I say almost because there's still some outliers, but we're almost in a full IP area. This is where the control plane actually could be realized. And I think if you look at the microservices once again, okay, we have all of these puzzle pieces, but we know where they are supposed to go. And then you use the control plane itself to say, I'm going to raise my hand if something doesn't go where it's supposed to go. And then you could build in on top of that a correction that would actually take place automatically. So that's sort of the vision that I see for it, but I'm only one person. There are a number of other people who think about where the control plane can go.
Well, there's one to your left who has a unique view of all this. So, I like to think of the world that you play in, Sean, with Florical Systems. You kind of have to be the Switzerland, right? That you've got touch points everywhere.
Well, definitely the Switzerland, but also the maestro, right? We're not necessarily playing the instruments, although we create some, but we have to make sure all those instruments are playing in harmony. And that's not easy when all the musicians want to do it their own way, right? And so we really needed, and we keep hearing this, the industry needed a universal control plane.
Sure.
And not just a control plane, because many people creating solutions have control planes, but I don't want to have to deal with 10, 20 different control planes and then create a control plane to control the control plane. I mean, it's insanity. So we needed a way to be able to communicate and have that, your HURA translator, that goes and how to talk to this device, how to talk to this device, and be able to do that once. And of course, when you're a software company and you're developing, you don't have really, especially where the industry is now, you really don't have the luxury of spending, a year or two in R&D and going down one path and realizing I just spent a couple $1 million in the complete wrong direction. So we really needed to, And that was kind of our motivation of getting a part of this group and say, we've got to do it right the first time. And once we create that, the escalation of development, it'll be just exponential in the path. So once people understand a path, you begin to build the civilization, right? You're not like just creating the goat path, and taking the machete and kind of clearing your way. No, once there's an established path, civilization happens, and it really expands the growth of what we're doing in the microservices space. So.
And I think just coming back down the line I'll put you on the spot again, Renard. We've done a lot of work together in the area of microservices and that sort of thing. And, it gets to the point where there's a lot of things that we used to do manually that even if you wanted to now, you just can't do them manually. And I'm thinking about first of all, like orchestration, right? Orchestration of devices and services that we're way beyond the point where you can do this and manage it on a spreadsheet or anything like that. And I think this is an area that's, it's not just a nice to have automation in this area. It's an absolute must. And the fact that we are in 2024 and we don't have a standardized way to do this is somewhat surprising.
Yeah, I think it's ripe for farming, to be honest. We are in a state right now where we have these hybrid workflows all over the place. And usually when you say hybrid, people are thinking cloud. But what I'm talking about when I say hybrid is you've got people who are managing large scale projects through email, through spreadsheets. I mean, it's still there. And some people are most comfortable in that space. However, you've got to start to educate your resources, your human resources, so that they get more comfortable with the use of automation. So we all have used a spreadsheet. To be honest, there's a lot of automated processes within a spreadsheet that none of us use, because most people weren't trained. They just kind of picked it up and moved along. You could start there in getting them more comfortable with the tools that they're using and then move them. But right now we have so much power in our hands.
Yeah.
We have so much power right now to really get rid of the mundane, and I'll go ahead and say it. Machine learning. See, you thought I was going to say the other word, but machine learning and automation have been a part of what we've been doing in this business since, the 70s. Those processes have to be in place first for you to even get to artificial intelligence. So the focus on
said the word.
I meant to put it there after setting the foundation, but you have to have in place, the tools and the infrastructure to move to that next step. Everyone's trying to sort of leap over right now. And I think we have to not slow down, but just pull back and really re-architect, and then build on top of that. Because if you start throwing, you can throw AI at anything, doesn't mean it's going to work and doesn't mean it's the right thing to do.
And just like microservices, right?
Exactly.
Neither one, going to the cloud, going to a microservice-based architecture, using AI, none of those are like end goals. They're means to an end, right? They're a way to improve our operations. And, we talked on a panel, yesterday about the fact that, the whole AI thing eventually, and probably I hope in the next 2 or 3 years won't be as active a part of the conversation because it's just a de facto thing that we do, right? That we're moving things to the cloud.
It's foundational.
Yeah.
That's the way you have to look at it.
So Loic, this jumped beautifully in my brain here. When we talk about managing things using spreadsheets and manual processes, the other part of the title of our session is dealing with live streaming. And when you're running a large media organization, it really surprised me, honestly, when you came to us and described the nature of the challenge with all the different streaming platforms that are popping up now, right? And it's like almost every day it feels like there's a new streaming platform where some of them are merging, some of them are going away. It's like shifting sands under our feet. And you came to us with a management challenge with that. Can you talk a little bit about, kind of what the state of this is now and what the nature is of the problem to be solved with dealing with all these streaming platforms?
Well, Chris, the main reason why I went to you guys with this challenge is that I like to sleep at night. Okay. That's the reason. Okay. But with the complexity that exists today in the landscape of live streaming and point-to-point distribution, and when I say live streaming, I may not be talking about live streaming directly to your iPhone here. I'm talking distributions to OTT platforms, to fast channels, to MVPDs. That world has changed so much in the last couple of years that the ability to create new streams has been driven by the fact that, your organization is signing contract with distributors, but the technology behind it has not improved. Nothing has been done in order to really standardize how you should actually do this. So what you end up with is a lot of one-off. So you're doing something specific for that platform, something very different for the next one. What it means for a media organization is that the scale of your infrastructure that you have to manage, the number of configurations, is extremely high. And when something goes wrong, well, you end up scratching your head to try to fix it. But it's not even stopping. It's not like you can even say, okay, I'm gonna go back to this and make it better, because tomorrow you're setting up a new stream and another one and another one. I brought up that problem that I like really to sleep at night again to these guys here. And my reaction was a bit, I was surprised that it was clear that there was a problem. We expanded we made a call for participations in the industry to see if someone would be interested in joining that conversation. And I must say, once again, the number of people that replied to this and that joined our meeting that we had a couple of weeks in New York, it is clear we have an issue and we need to address it. And I'm not the only one who likes to sleep at night. So a lot of people from the vendor side, for the media sides, are willing to actually to spend time to try to agree on the landscape that would work for everyone here. So a lot of exciting news that will come up in about 6 months, I hope. And then we'll take it from there.
As with a lot of things, the first step is admitting you have a problem, right? And I think as an industry, we've finally said we have a serious problem here, and that we cannot continue to manage all these streaming platforms, all these methods of distribution manually. And that, of course, feeds into automation. Back to you, Sean, and you're clearly on the distribution side of things.
Yeah.
What are you seeing in terms of how do you guys deal with all these various distribution paths? Where it used to be simple. When you and I started in this business, it was get it to the transmitter and it's all good.
Transmitter, that was it. And now there's, using the same kind of core media. It's got all of these outlets where it needs to go with different kind of ad placements and even different protocols for the ad placements and so forth and so on. So it's really becoming more complex. Kind of riding on the machine learning part. I was asked yesterday, how is AI going to affect automation? And how is that going to play? And I'm saying, well, it's going to be a big sea change, and it's almost necessary. But the challenge we have is the machine learning, right? Training the model. And there's a person right now, and of course we call this master control operator, and this operator is not managing just one, feed now. They're managing multiple. And with using a lot of automation, and it's almost like a 747 pilot. Most of flying is automated, but you want a guy grabbing the stick in case something goes wrong. Well, why do you want a guy grabbing the stick? Because there's an intelligence of understanding what role they need to play in order to do that. And where we are right now in the industry, we have not trained that model to replace that individual. And that is a process that's going to take, some years. Like, why do they make this decision matrix? What's causing that? What decision do they need to make on this scenario, and et cetera. That needs to be trained, and that model needs to be trained. And people just think, oh, just throw AI at it. But you're just buzzword bingo. That means nothing. You're saying nothing at that point. You're just throwing a word. You've got to train the models. And once you train the models, yes, machine learning is the adoption of information and knowledge. AI, from a psychology background with me, intelligence is how well you retrieve that knowledge, right? So that's the difference between ML, AI is utilizing the knowledge that you've just been given it, so we have to provide that. And I think once we do, well, the sky's the limit. Once we train that model, then we can do a lot more with distribution of those live platforms.
So is there a day down the road where I walk into a control room and there are no people?
Well, I mean, we've kind of sort of been doing that for a while, automation, all the way back in my NBC years when we brought on some Telemundo stations. They would turn the lights off on a Friday and come back on a Monday, and playing out the automation. But that's very rudimentary. That's very straightforward. At the end of the day, will there be an age where there's no human beings yes. That I would say near future. It's kind of dependent. I would put it, more pessimistically 5 years, more optimistically 2 years, and it depends on the kind of the channel complexity, live versus static and et cetera, dynamic, but yes, I think we have to get there in point of auto configuration of the various different OTT streamers that pop in. We need that process. So it's not just somebody architecting to that environment and saying, here's the protocol. We read it. Boom. We're automatically feeding.
Is it fair to say that, if we look at what already has happened in radio, that's kind of where we're heading for television? Is that a reasonable?
Well, I wish you could say radio is more automated and AI enabled, but it's not. I mean, it's certainly you can have multiple channels but again, it's the dynamic piece when you have live interaction.
Right.
The more dynamic, the more it pushes for a intelligent source to make some decisions. And that still happens in radio, and that's still going to happen in television. The set it and forget it channels all day long. Why have a human there? We have enough alerting, processes around that to make some rudimentary decisions, switched back up and et cetera. But when it becomes the more dynamic, kind of breaking news and things like that, that's when an intelligence has to be at the source to make some decisions. And that's where we're going.
Coming back down the line, Renard. So is it, again, we're getting toward the end of our time here, and I always like to end up with like some, forward looking, where do we see all this heading? Particularly, in the control plane area. How far away do you think we ideally are from being to the point where we do not actually care where these different services reside, that, where the cloud becomes almost irrelevant, right? It's like, okay, it's on the cloud, or, it's on a public cloud, it's on a private cloud, it's on-prem. Are we realistic in setting a goal to say, in 3 years, people shouldn't care?
It's kind of a multi-layer question, because I think from the standpoint of caring, we're always going to care, and we need to. From a security standpoint, there's certain things that I don't necessarily want on a public cloud, and I want to have them in a private cloud. I want to have them, behind my firewall and so forth and so on. We need to be able to differentiate which goes where. It would be nice if the control plane is a part of that conversation so that you can code that in. I think the other part about it is when it comes to the cloud is already ubiquitous. It's already there, so I shouldn't say I don't care about the cloud, but it's another tool. It's another place. It's another thing, and that's fine. But you build in the logic with the control plane to say, okay, now what am I going to tell the cloud to do? What am I going to tell these files to do? Where am I going to have these files move? And then what's going to be the cascading effect of that movement? That's more so where my mind goes as far as what I care about.
All right. And, Loic, you're in the enviable position of maybe having the last word on this. And I'd like to just kind of go back to the live streaming challenge to finish this off. Again, is it realistic that we can get to the point where, automated processes and maybe, I'm saying it, AI assisted processes, can help us and make you sleep at night, and automatically, be able to say, hey, somebody's announcing a new streaming service and it's starting next week. And instead of, today, I'm assuming this is a major source of stress, to be able to say, oh, no problem. We've constrained the variables there and we can stand that up in minutes or hours. Is it reasonable to set that as a goal?
Well, I think the only way you can actually achieve that is by defining the rule on engagement, to have some type of standard that you can follow that says, hey, those are my 3 options. And I know very well how to do those 3 options and not those 527 options that I have to choose from. So when you have a limited number of options, automations becomes easier. Okay. Those options also needs to include all the capabilities that are needed to achieve quality of delivery to that given platform. So they cannot be limiting the power of what you could do. And I think that's a very important aspect of this. AI, to solve that problem, it's, the word that was said already several times today is, yes, you can just use AI for that. It will figure it out. AI cannot figure it out the problems that you cannot figure it out. Okay. So if you know how to resolve problems because there is a logical way to find the solutions, then you have a way of using AI to do that, to optimize it. Okay. You cannot solve a problem with AI that cannot be solved in a different way.
Exactly. That is a kind of a great way to finish this off. So hopefully this gives you a bit of a view into the types of things that we're working on in SMPTE RIS-OSA. And I'll just leave it with, if any of this resonates with you, I've seen a bunch of, kind of shaking heads in the audience. If you too are feeling points of pain in particularly in having a lack of a standard control plane, across platforms, across the cloud, across on-prem, and if you're losing sleep like Loic is, every time somebody announces a new streaming service, we're working actively on trying to solve these 2 problems, and we would love to have your voice heard, as part of this. And, so if you're interested, SMPTE website has a nice page on, SMPTE RIS-OSA. You can certainly contact me or any of our good friends at SMPTE. The SMPTE booth is right around here somewhere, right? So I'm sure they'd be happy to sign you right up. So, with that, I should have mentioned earlier, a little late now, but, you are welcome to jump in with any questions. I don't know if we have a minute or whatever left. Any questions before we wrap this? Well, what a great panel. You answered all the questions in anticipation. So, again, thank you to NAB. Thank you to SMPTE, for allowing us to do this. And, hopefully we're back here in a year and we're able to say problem solved on a lot of this stuff. So thank you very much for your time and attention. Appreciate it.